I have conducted an inquiry into Victoria's No Jab, No Play amendments to the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. For those unfamiliar with the policy, at its core it requires parents to demonstrate that their child has been fully immunised before that child can be enrolled in early education, which includes childcare or kindergartens. My overall position is that no jab, no play is a positive regulatory change, but it does have some framing issues. The first consideration with the policy was whether the Victorian government had any justification for controlling how parents manage their child's immunisation status, which was once a private matter. This policy reflects our risk management society, which is more accepting of intrusive government regulation to mitigate risk. With vaccines in particular, when deaths of children are focused upon in the media, this can act as a triggering mechanism to open a window for government to regulate while the public is particularly concerned by the issue. There are reasons for the government to get involved from a market perspective. Immunisations are merit goods, and the government, through existing subsidisation programs, recognises the value of vaccines and their inability to self-regulate. Vaccinating children avoids outbreaks of preventable illnesses, taking the burden off our public health system also. And it is also justified from a social perspective, as this policy protects children unable to manage their own immunisations from preventable illnesses. This policy aims to correct the behaviour of parents who deviate from the norm of vaccinating their children by prompting and educating them through their interaction with the early education system. Additionally, the vast majority of parents in Victoria already vaccinate their children, and of those who are yet to do so, this is most commonly for simple forgetfulness or experiencing disadvantage impeding their access, meaning the policy is more of a prompt to vaccinate rather than a means of forcing vaccination. I examined the regulatory scheme design. At its core, the policy is a rule which is enforced with maximum fines of $20,000 against early education providers who enrol unvaccinated children. This raises a few questions. Is $20,000 proportionate? Well, from a business perspective, this sanction needs to outweigh the profits made from enrolling unvaccinated children and the cost and effort of childcare institutions managing the immunisation status of their students. I looked at less onerous no jab, no play regimes, such as Western Australia's, which has no strict requirements, but simply allows early education providers to send unvaccinated students home if there is a risk of illness outbreak. But WA currently has the lowest immunisation rates in the country, which indicates this is perhaps not stringent enough. Alternatively, I considered if there should be fines against parents like in some EU countries. I have concluded no, as the explanatory memoranda don't want the provisions to ostracise parents, which I agree with, and measures such as the generous 16-week grace period are about not alienating parents who haven't vaccinated their children away from childcare, but to engage with them, potentially over weeks, to open a dialogue that may lead them to vaccinate their children. I asked, should the policy be constrained to just early education? Extending it to primary school would certainly increase vaccination rates, as primary school is compulsory, but I concluded that I don't think it is necessary. Victoria is currently above its herd immunity target, so the cost of extending and monitoring the regime in primary schools wouldn't be proportionate. I found the wording of no jab, no play problematic. By framing the policy with this catchphrase, it is clearly designed to provoke a political reaction. The policy focuses on the prescriptive component of the policy and sounds hard-line. It also appears to serve a political purpose, because the general sentiment from media articles I've been reading is a desire for a hard line taken against anti-vaxxers. However, this framing seems to not reflect the reality of the policy, which is very flexible with its grace period to accommodate families experiencing social disadvantage, and it's more about starting a conversation with parents. The government has also claimed the policy is focused on improving health outcomes for children, and restricting them from early education is an absolute last resort. But no play seems to suggest punishing the children is at the forefront of the policy. This hardline wording of the policy may have won some people over politically, but some academic commentators have warned it is just as likely to gain sympathy for the anti-vax movement, particularly among individuals who are generally resistant to hardline nanny state regulation more generally. So I conclude that no jab, no play is a successful policy initiative which currently strikes a proportionate balance, but has some issues with its overly political framing.